Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of In Defense of Fitness. This time, we're going to go over a video called CrossFit, Is It Bad For You? Joe Rogan and CT Fletcher. Now, here's the deal. I have not watched this video, but I have heard Joe Rogan's take on CrossFit a few times. That being said, a lot of the way he trains seems to be he does functional movements, he does them mixed together, and he does a wide variety of things. So if I had to say some statements, it sounds like he's doing very CrossFit-y things. But I don't know his personal belief on CrossFit anymore, and I actually haven't seen this video. It's from 6 years ago. Let's see. He's talking to CT Fletcher. CT Fletcher is a bodybuilder by trade, so his only goal was to get some big muscles. So I don't know, again, what this is going to be, but let's dig in, hear what it is, and unpack it as we go. Is CrossFit bad for you?
The Joe Rogan experience.
And Avengers are out.
Yeah, man. 3 hours long, man. I stayed awake.
I haven't seen it yet. I heard it's great.
I stayed awake.
I heard it's great.
Good enough to keep me awake. That's saying something. I go to sleep all the time.
Is it from the heart transplant? Are you sleepier now?
No, I went to sleep all the time before the heart transplant. No, I get comfortable, and it's over, man.
If you aren't aware, CT Fletcher had a heart transplant. He had a big heart attack, massive heart attack. I love his inspirational stuff, by the way. CT Fletcher is great. But had a big heart attack and had to have a heart transplant and recovered from that. It's cool to see him back and alive and kicking and doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over.
Well, that's
the
often,
lights are out.
That's the thing, too, with people who train a lot.
Nobody fucking with me.
Yeah. If you train a lot, though, you're always ready to take a nap,
Oh,
right?
yeah, man.
Because your body's always, recovering.
Yeah. I'm out, man. No problem.
That's a weird one. Oftentimes, people who train a lot, it kind of depends on what you mean by a lot, because people who are overtraining, like they're training a lot, then yes, they will often want to take naps because they're just spending too much time exerting their body. But oftentimes people who train for, an hour a day or less, they get more energy from that. They can often sleep well at night, but aren't just always ready to take a nap. That kind of often has to do with other lifestyle factors they got going on. So interesting.
But overtraining is bullshit.
You think overtraining is bullshit?
Uh-oh. I know you don't. I bet you think that it's not bullshit, and overtraining is very real, don't you, Joe?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
Yeah.
I knew you would say that.
You know what rhabdomyolysis is?
Okay, so the statement he's making is overtraining is bullshit. And then I'm actually curious as to what Rogan's going to say here. Fundamentally speaking, it is possible to overtrain, both in an individual session as well as too much long term. And I think the definition of overtraining for a long-term thing is a continued retrograde for performance. So you're training so much that you go backwards in your performance. Overtraining in a single session might be what Joe's going to be alluding to here, which is you can get something called rhabdomyolysis. And what that would be is such severe muscle tissue breakdown that you actually flood your kidneys with muscle tissue and you can die of kidney failure. Now, we want to avoid rhabdo, so we try not to do too much in any one given session. The thing about rhabdo is, though, if you have been training a lot, you can actually kind of inoculate yourself to getting rhabdo. You'll basically be able to process high CPK levels in a way that, classically you'd go to the hospital with rhabdo symptoms, but post-workout, your body just kind of flushes through it and it's okay, if you have built up to that kind of volume and that kind of intensity. But it would be something you built up to. So I'm very curious to see where he goes, see what CT Fletcher's mindset on it is. My guess is he's going to say something along the lines of, most people on the planet are not overtraining, and it is not a thing. And I would agree with him. The vast majority of human beings who exist do not overtrain and are in no danger of overtraining. They might be in danger of overtraining in a session because they might get something like rhabdo, but it's Majority or not, but let's hear what they say.
No, I have no idea.
It's
what
when you
that
overtrain and you're literally, your muscles start breaking down and it pollutes your kidneys. People die from it.
is. Wow, that was a big ass long word. And if you look in the dictionary, it'll say bullshit. No, I think there's under resting, under recuperation.
That's true.
But overtraining, no. If you get enough rest and enough recuperation, I think overtraining is bullshit.
Right, but if you have to work out hard.
Okay, so the argument there is it's an interesting one. It's a subtle thing. It depends on how you would define overtraining. Overtraining would be such training that you cannot recover from it. So that would be by design the definition of it, which is the same thing he's saying. If you're not recovering, then that's a thing. So under recovery, but he's just saying there's no such thing as overtraining. But the only way you could under recover would be to overtrain. So kind of cyclical in his thinking, but I do appreciate the sentiment of, yeah, recover, man. And you got to put your emphasis on recovery as a thing.
And then you have to work out again the next day, and you work out hard the next day. That's rhabdomyolysis piss. When you get rhabdo, your piss comes out looking like iced tea.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the rapper.
So what they're talking about there is one of the symptoms of rhabdomyolysis is you've got, I think it's hemoglobin or myoglobin in the blood that's breaking down and going into the bloodstream. So when you urinate, it's in your blood, it's in your blood. It's not in your bloodstream. It's breaking down. It's in your bloodstream, but it's also in your urine. So you'll be peeing and it'll look like Coca-Cola or, like he said, like iced tea, which if that's the case, you should go to the hospital and get rehydrated.
No,
Ice-T's more than a rapper, though, right? It's hard to say he's a rapper.
No, he's a rapper,
a lot of
actor. Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, I mean, he had
cool.
Body Count. That's a metal band, so he has that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Ice-T's cool.
But yeah, he looks like Diet Coke. Let's say that.
Yeah,
that's what your
fucked.
piss looks like.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah, that's what happens.
And I work fucking 8 hours a day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day at the post office, went to the gym, put in another 4 to 6 hours for fucking 25 years, and my piss never looked like that,
Joe. Sample size of 1 is not really a good metric to go off of. Hey, it didn't happen to me, so it doesn't exist. That's kind of his MO though. He like is just like, stop making excuses, stop doing shit, like being a bitch. Like that's kind of his thing that he says, and just makes you get after it, which is super motivating. But I mean, there is a realistic side to this of why would you only call you the thing that we're looking at here? Like we would look at the bigger picture of, are there actually issues with overtraining? In addition to that, he probably wasn't doing high intensity training. He was probably doing a lot more around the bodybuilding, classic strength training, which often has plenty of rest in between sets and doesn't do quite the same amount of damage in the individual sessions as higher intensity stuff. Higher intensity being higher force production, higher power production. I mean, there was intensity in what he was doing, but it was often probably with ample amount of rest, ample amount of recovery. And yeah, he also probably inoculated himself to it over time. Like he was probably smart about starting at lighter loads and steadily building up to it, and then had his routine that he would go into. So that would be my guess. I don't know why you would ever spend 4 to 6 hours of your life working out a day. It seems absolutely bonkers though.
Yeah, I think that's more endurance athletes, and particularly CrossFit. A lot of CrossFit people get wrapped up.
Oh yeah,
because they're competing against other people, and they get real wrapped up in it. And
I got to ask Jason Khalifa about that. He's a good friend of mine. See if his piss ever looked like root beer.
It's a real issue for CrossFitters and like ultra endurance athletes.
Yeah.
Okay, he's correct. It absolutely is. The reason for that is because the higher levels of intensity, and oftentimes coupling that with the higher levels of volume. And you tend to do things in kind of varied ways. So you're never developing any one bit of kind of, how should I say this? because there's the potential of you doing something new because we vary our program, you could have capacity in many other areas, but then when you go to do this one thing, it's just too much work in that one area. So you damage that area more than you can handle, and you end up potentially doing something like rhabdomyolysis. So a couple common causes of this are something like jumping pull-ups that are slow negatives that eventually become fast negatives because there's an eccentric load, which does a lot of damage, and you can do high volume and it progressively scales. There are things like GHD sit-ups, which will cause it. And then there's also a combination of, like he's saying, exactly like Joe's saying, the competition nature. People will go past what they should. They'll often celebrate, like take Murph. That's a great day for it, where Murph, you're doing hundreds of pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and it's like, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you're running a mile on both sides, all with a weight vest on. Super high volume, super good cause, like you're doing it for a fallen soldier, and then afterwards you celebrate with some beers. So there's like a hydration issue, there's all kinds of stuff going on there, and people come in and go way harder than they should. It also, like you said, happens in endurance athletes because people, they'll do small training runs and then they'll go and do the New York Marathon and be like, that wasn't enough training for it. And because their body can kind of keep going, it does, but way beyond the capacity that they should. But he's right.
Yeah. He's one of the top CrossFitters, guys.
Is he?
Yeah.
So they're talking about Jason Khalipa, and Jason I remember I knew Jason and hung with Jason while he was texting CT a bunch, and he loved CT's attitude. And Jason is a similar kind of dude in his thinking. He's evolved over the years and become a different man, but he just kind of like that head down, work sort of deal, just like CT. Jason was a top athlete, and Jason did not get rhabdo. Jason was pretty much inoculated to rhabdo because of the amount that he trained and how good his recovery was. I don't think to this day Jason's ever had rhabdo. I think Jason's done some pretty stupid workouts, and I've done them with him, but I could call him and ask, but I don't think he's ever got rhabdo. But Jason has now taken time away from CrossFit. He still does training, but if he were to go back and try to compete like he was, and he just did it in one session, no ramp up. He just went straight, go back to try to hit an old, do Murph at the same time. He might be able to give himself rhabdo because he's got the mindset to go there, but no longer the physiology to support himself. Maybe, I don't know. Jason's body might be gifted enough to where that wouldn't be the case, but yeah. Interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, he was world champion 2 or 3 times.
Those guys are ridiculously fit.
Oh man,
ridiculously fit.
Look, I had him in my gym, and I put him through my training. He was he did the shit
like
easy.
It was nothing.
Yeah. He's fucking that guy. CrossFit, and weightlifters kind of laugh at CrossFitters. That's girly shit, man. It's bull. CrossFitting is bullshit. But that motherfucker is in extremely good shape.
Yeah. CrossFitting is definitely not.
Yeah,
is that him right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not bullshit.
No.
It's very hard.
Yep.
What those guys do is very, 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 very hard.
Yeah.
The real question is whether or not.
Thanks, Joe.
That's good for your body.
Hey, there we go. Now we're getting to it. Finally got to the question that was here. Is CrossFit good for your body? Let's hear what he says.
That's where, and I'm not qualified just to judge, but there's a lot of people that are professional strength and conditioning coaches that frown upon it because they think that those kind of movements, like powerlifting movements, like clean press, that kind of shit, that should not be done for the maximum amount of repetitions. They think that should be done for power. You should hoist up your maximum or 85% of your maximum for X amount of times, and that's it. But what they're trying to do is just, if Mike does 10, I want to do 12.
He's kind of speaking to a few things here. So some very classic rhetoric around CrossFit was don't do high-level Olympic weightlifting for multiple reps. Now, he's saying max sets. We don't do max loads, max sets. You also don't tend to do those kinds of things till failure if you're coached well and you understand the method. But there is inherent risk when you do those things. And just like he's saying, ego can always get in the way and make it so Mike does 10 reps, you do 12 reps sort of deal. Now, what that does do is it drives really profound adaptation for people. So when they push themselves to these places that they normally wouldn't, they end up having potential for some serious gains, which is one of the reasons people love CrossFit so much. You get results really, really quickly. But there is always the potential for injury when it comes to pushing yourself in these places, especially when it comes to things like the Olympic lifts. Now, I actually don't see the injuries that we're talking about in the Olympic lifts in CrossFit. I've been doing it for 20 years, and it was a common critique, and it was just that it had never been really done. Now, if you were doing 80% of a max in workouts for many reps all the time, absolutely, you could probably and would probably hurt yourself. But the loads that we use for people are very, very, very sub-max when it comes to high repetition stuff, and often not till failure, often well before it with intended stimuli, all kinds of different ways to approach those things. But it's definitely up for conversation about how these things are implemented and used. But in a good CrossFit program, you shouldn't be hitting failure during Metcons. You should maybe be hitting failure during strength days or close to it, or hitting high percentages. And I think what classic strength and conditioning's argument would be is that normal people shouldn't do this. But normal people's levels of failure are always going to be in different places, way pulled back, way relative to the individual. And I think it's one of the best ways, like, to get better is by coming closer to failure. And if we can safely coach people to those places, then it'll be one of the more effective ways, which is why strength and conditioning uses these types of lifts. They offer a lot. Now, they don't use them in the high volume that he's talking about here, but at those high volumes, it should be very, very sub-max on the loading. And again, anecdotally speaking and statistically speaking, when we look at some of the studies that have been done on CrossFit and injury rates, it's just you're not seeing the injury rates that people were worried about. People like Mike Boyle, Turd Burglar 5000, whatever he is. Smart man in a lot of areas, but still hasn't seen it from the source, and hasn't probably done it with a good coach or seen it implemented well in a gym. But I can attest to it over the years. It's just not something where we actually see the problems that people spoke about. Anywho, keep listening.
Right.
Mike does 12, I want to do 15.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they think that there's like Steve Maxwell, who's a pretty famous strength and conditioning coach. He frowns upon it, and he just thinks it's just those movements are not designed for endurance. Those movements are designed for power.
It's true. So those movements are designed for power. But what you can use them for, because they're designed for power, is muscular endurance. So rather than cardiorespiratory endurance, which you will get some of from doing weightlifting movements for endurance, you'll get profound muscular endurance, which is funny. He's a fighter, right? And he loves fighting and he loves all this stuff. That's what you get from that. So CrossFitters are some of the wildest athletes when it comes to sub-max for reps. So you look at you mediocre athletes in CrossFit, or even the top athletes, what they can do close to 100% of their 1 rep maxes is nutso. It doesn't make sense. And we are hands down the best in the world at going just sub a max and just doing it well and doing it for a long time, because the strength endurance, their muscular endurance is next level. I'm going to say better than that of pretty much any other training methodology. Because no one else does strength endurance like we do, which is, to me, a very functional kind of strength. Can you lift pretty heavy stuff forever? That's moving, that's working, that's carrying, that's roping horses. Like, can you do something pretty high level for a long ass time? And that's what we do.
He thinks ultimately it's detrimental for your body. And that if you want to have a long career in fitness and constantly be able to work out like deep into your 50s and 60s, he just thinks it's very detrimental for your body.
So I would like to see that play out in his longer term argument. If you were hurting yourself, yes, I would say that would be detrimental. But if you're not hurting yourself, I mean, I've done this for 22 years and I'm quite the opposite, more capable and functional than 99% of my peers. Can you do that with other training methodologies? Sure. We also know plenty of people who are doing this in their 60s, 70s, 80s and are just crushing, you know? It is still relatively new. So we don't have somebody who started, I don't think, really around the 40s and is now doing it in their 70s, 60s. I mean, maybe they exist out there. I'm sure they exist out there. But yeah, I don't think that we're going to run. I'm open to that not being the case. Like if I was walking around and seeing the majority of people who do CrossFit with like long-term damage, I see a lot of people who do CrossFit with like little aches and pains and little, issues here and there, but that's called being alive. I see plenty of people who don't do any training with all these little issues, let alone people who do training. And most of the people who do it in CrossFit are like, yeah, my shoulder hurts. Like people who do have pain are like, yeah, my shoulder hurts, but it's okay. I'll figure it out. I'll work around it. I'll see someone. And because they want to get back to doing the things they previously did, they take care of that shoulder and they really do things that support getting better, which is unique to this methodology. But anyway.
Again, I'm not the guy to tell.
Right,
that's
right.
true or not true. And
Me either.
I'm sure a lot of
I love both these guys for speaking what they know and citing what they know, but then also being willing to be like, I don't really know.
I need to get one of those top level CrossFit guys. I know I've gone back and forth with Rich Froning. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Online, but I never got him on.
So Rogan brought on Matt. I don't think he brought on Rich, but Matt, it was not the greatest ambassador for CrossFit then. He might be better one now, but then he was just all about competing and winning. And I would say he's not super bought into the larger thing. I think now he is a lot more, and he's grown as a man since then, but wasn't the greatest of interviews. I wish he would have brought on someone who could really speak to the method very, very well. Rather, not the competitive method, but the gym method, like who's run gyms and trained normal people, like a really good coach. Like I honestly think it'd be really fun to be just grilled by Joe on like, here's what I've heard, here's the blah, blah, blah. Like, how does this play out? Like, that'd be amazing. But I also heard there's some reasons that people so Andy Stumpf, who runs Cleared Hot, who's a good friend of Joe, and he's been on the podcast multiple times. Andy was a core CrossFitter back in the day. I taught lots of low-level ones with him. Super good dude. I actually really like Andy. But Andy spoke out against his time with Greg and that relationship with Joe. And I think because of that, Joe has distanced himself from bringing people from HQ on. I think Adrian Bosman would be an amazing person to have on Joe Rogan. I think, I'd love to go on. I think that'd be really, really fun to have that conversation, but very, very unlikely.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta reach out to him again.
I'm sure Jason would die to be on here.
Rich would be a great person to be
on. He is exceptionally fit. And, the long term, I don't know, because he's still a pretty young guy.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's all I got. It was a good little bit. I mean, there was more positive and I think negative, and just some perspective on it. So, good stuff. That's a good little interview, good little conversation. CT and Joe did some good stuff there. Really would love to see a well-educated CrossFitter on CrossFit on Joe Rogan sometime. I think that'd be really cool. Anywho, have a wonderful day, y'all.